All right, welcome to this session, ladies and gentlemen, and esteemed luminary of automation journey. So, my name is Linda Ding. I'm Director of Solutions Marketing at Automation Anywhere. It's my great honor to welcome you to this session, Strategizing Success, by the most dynamic speaker you will see during this conference, Matt Ham. But that's right. Let's give him a round of applause. Woohoo! This is not this is not under delivery of this opening because he's probably one of the most dynamic speakers I have met in the last 15 years. With that, I do have to cover the safe harbor. Please make your investment choices and decisions accordingly. A lot of features are forward-looking. But most important, I would like you to take away from this year's Imagine 2023 is the new system work of designing and delivering automation strategy. And as Patricia, right here, have shared that she is now seeing Automation Success Platform is the solution platform for all things automation. It's not about just one single tool. It's not about RPA. It's not just about document automation. It's not just about the process discovery or APIs, but it's connecting all those tools and the capacity together so that you can create a more seamless, connected system of automation for your services. So with that, I am going to hand it to Matt to let him share with all of you how he has brought this vision, this connected system of work vision to life at Osaic. Matt, let's welcome him.
Thank you, Linda. I feel like I have a tall order to live up to being a dynamic speaker here, but appreciate the kind words. And thank you to Automation Anywhere, Evan and the team for your partnership. It has been a wonderful ride, and I look forward to our continued success together. My name is Matt Ham. I work for Osaic, and I head up digital automation for the firm. A little bit about me. I've got 25 years in the financial services. I've been with Osaic for 8.5 years. Prior to that, with American Express for about 17. And I would sum up my career as being an advocate for the customer, enabling our business partners with technology, leveraging Lean Six Sigma principles to drive outcomes that are customer-facing, customer-focused, not business-focused because we want to meet a KPI or because we got some initiative we're trying to achieve. And so for me, I'm very passionate about the customer. And with Osaic, being in the wealth management industry, financial advisors, you'll hear me say financial professionals, use those interchangeably. Very passionate about that because for you and I as consumers in our nation, we know we have a challenge when it comes to financial planning, preparing for retirement, having the right tools and resources available to us. That's something that I look at each and every day to say how I enable our financial professionals in turn enables us to win with our own financial goals and aspirations. I would also say from a personal perspective, I'm very competitive. I grew up doing sports, anything from gymnastics, where I was trained by an Olympian coach, if that tells you anything. Studied classical piano for 10 years, and in my adult years, I started to dabble with amateur car racing. So we look at that and say, there's an element of excellence that's needed. Some would say perfection, but I like to choose to say excellence, and I carry that over from my personal life into my professional life. So a little bit about Osaic. You may not have heard of us before. We were formerly known as Advisor Group. We changed our name just in June of this year. We're in the process of going through a whole rebranding effort. Osaic is one of the largest independent broker-dealer companies in the nation. We are consolidating right now 8 different broker-dealers into a single broker-dealer. And we provide products and services and solutions to financial advisors that have their own business. It'd be like Matt Ham LLC, that kind of a thing. And we provide anything from, I'm starting my brand new book of business, I don't have a single client, to being very well established, to I'm looking to exit and sell my book of business and monetize it. We provide succession planning for the advisors. And the advantage of being in part of an independent broker-dealer channel is you make the decisions as to what are the best investments and securities and those sort of things that are right for your clients, and we offer an array of products and services that aren't tied to us as an individual firm saying that it's our own proprietary product. So a little bit about our history. We were formerly part of AIG, and we were spun out of AIG back in 2016 and been owned by private equity ever since. We have done, since our spinoff, we've done approximately 8 of our own M&A activities in acquiring businesses, because if you're familiar with the industry, there's a lot of consolidation happening because of regulatory oversight, increased scrutiny from that perspective, and it's costing more to do business. So we've been acquiring smaller firms, and as a result, we're here today to talk about automation for, I think, some obvious reasons from a scale perspective. Just some numbers for you. We have over 11,000 financial professionals that are part of or affiliate with Osaic. We have a little over $500 billion of assets under administration or management. We have, from a home office perspective, 2,500 employees. And I'm happy to say also that 40% of our C-suite is made up of women. For an industry that is heavily male-dominated, I think that's, we actually lead, I believe, the industry in that. We engage with over 270 financial institutions, anything from providing clearing and custody services to insurance products, annuities, those sort of things. And over 3,100 of our financial professionals are women too. So again, we're looking at how we bring diversity to the table here. Last and certainly not least, we're across all 50 states. And even from an employee perspective, I believe we're in 49 of 50 states. So we have a pretty diverse geographic footprint there as well. So why are we on this journey? Well, I mentioned, scale. We've been consolidating, we're merging with other firms. Our customers are telling us we need better solutions, right? They're telling us what you're giving us isn't good enough. And so we're looking at this as an opportunity to say, how do we elevate the customer experience? And I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this slide because I think it speaks for itself. Just look at the red box. If you're familiar with J.D. Power Awards and the customer surveys, customer satisfaction surveys that they do every year, the last 3 years, Advisor Group, now Osaic, has either been at the bottom or very close to the bottom. And so their customers, our customers, are telling us something needs to change. And specifically, they're telling us they're not able to spend enough time with their clients. I'll translate that. They're spending too much time talking to us and having to engage with the home office. So they're not able to grow their book of business as quickly as they want to. They're telling us when they're dissatisfied that they're 3 times more likely to leave. Now, we all know it's easier, it's less expensive to maintain your customers than to get new customers. And let me just give you some facts about this number. In this survey, those that said they're 3 times more likely to leave had an average revenue for the firm of $800,000 a year. And you go, okay, we can all get our mind wrapped around $800,000. It's a lot of money, right? But we earn revenue through assets that are being managed. So let's put it in perspective of assets. $800,000 of revenue equates roughly to $80 million of assets. So if you're to start your book today and say, how long will it take you to earn or get clients up to 80 million, unless you got some ultra-rich, high-end net worth individual, it's going to take a long time to get there. So there's that. The other thing with it is that it said the technology and operation support that we're providing is actually one of, if not the top driver of dissatisfaction. And so therefore, we've been challenged with initiatives that we've put out there in the past that had a digital lens to it, e-signature, those sort of things. We had low adoption because maybe we poorly executed the rollout, those sort of things. So we have a behavior aspect of they're used to using, I'll call it legacy ways of engaging with us, maybe even still faxing in documents, those sort of things. So they haven't been quick to adopt digital tools. But here's the silver lining in it, and that is not everyone says that we're bad. They say, when I have high advocacy, the chance that I'm going to leave is about 2%. And why that is an important number, because if we had 2% attrition with our advisor base, that would be leading the industry year over year. So that's a huge opportunity for us. So when we started to look at that, and we look at our goals as an organization, it became really clear that we need to refocus on automation as a firm. We need to look at the customer experience and say, how are we delivering solutions to our advisors that is easier for them to do business with us, gives them more time to engage with existing clients, building those relationships, and creating new relationships. From a technology offering perspective, we need to provide tools that are easy and intuitive, that essentially, ideally, is like a straight-through process, if you will, but enables them, again, to have those engaging conversations and effortless paperwork, if you will, or following processes to get accounts moved over or accounts added. From an employee perspective, we need to think about how we're giving our employees the right tools. Not only that, as we heard yesterday and we've heard in other breakout sessions, we know that there is a shortage of talent across the country. And that's just going to continue. I believe the number was over the next 10 years, it's what, a 3%, estimated 3% reduction in workforce. And so, number one, we need to retain our top talent, and we need to provide them the right tools so that way they can engage in a successful way with our advisors. Scaled solutions for growth. We've been in the acquisition business. We're going to continue to be in the acquisition business. It's not our core primary driver of how we grow. We have organic growth strategies as well. But I'll just stick on the M&A side for a moment. As we acquire new companies, we have a bunch of decentralized processes. And so we need to be able to scale and have autonomous tools available to us that help to ease that M&A activity. We need to leverage business intelligence to help us make right and thoughtful decisions that help engage with our advisors, engage with our employees in a way that could drive new revenue streams, that can provide and highlight inefficiencies in processes. And lastly, governance, that we're doing all this from the mindset of really thinking of governance first and foremost from a security, controls perspective, the integrity of data, those sort of things. So with that, there we go. I want to talk about, I'll take a step back. We started our journey less than 15 months ago. In fact, tomorrow, we're celebrating 1 year of our very first bot going into production. And we spent the first couple of months over the summer of last year laying out a framework, if you will, of driving a business-centric center of excellence. And that's unique. I mean, when I was here last year talking with people, the majority of firms that I engage with, it's an IT-centric organization. And we were intentional from the beginning to say we want a business-centric organization, center of excellence. We really want it to be focused on the customer first and foremost. And so with that, the very first thing that was done was establishing a governance council. And this was very important for me. Number one, because I don't know everything. Two, I want to get a trusted group of people within the organization, senior leaders, to help craft the strategy. And third, I would say, you don't want to go at it alone. I'll just say it that way. And so my governance council, first and foremost, my very first member was my CISO, the head of information security. I had our head of infrastructure, head of development, so a lot of IT, right? Representation from there. Representation from our operations team, which is where we were going to start some proof of concepts. Finance, HR. I even had internal audit. You're like, that's an interesting one. We could talk about that offline. But my point is, it was a cross-functional representation from the beginning. And why? Because I knew that we were embarking on a huge change, and that change is going to require advocacy and support throughout to make it successful. Next was, what kind of center of excellence do we want in terms of, do we want a federated model, a decentralized model, a centralized model? And in short, we landed on a centralized model. And I will say this, we're very open to, and we have plans for our future roadmap to move to a federated model. But we wanted to establish discipline. We wanted to get our feet grounded in automation, first and foremost, with a centralized group running it. I would say also, our vision is beyond just, I'll use the word automation, but we all know automation means many different things. But to start, we're only using one type of automation. But we knew that over time, we're going to be looking at generative AI, we're going to be looking at automated workflows, and many other sort of automated solutions out there. So we wanted to have control of that, if you will, from a centralized place versus trying to create a federated model, then everyone's kind of doing their own thing, so to speak. Third, business-centric discipline. This is really around understanding and prioritizing the most value-added use cases. We'd like to get a $120 million save out there, like it was a Petrobras did. You know, they shared that yesterday. That's pretty cool. Maybe one day we'll find something like that. But we wanted to be intentional about finding the right use cases that were touching our customers, going back to the pain points. They're calling in too much. They're spending too much time with us. So how can we start to alleviate that pain early and often? And also with that, we aligned our organization to sit within our digital products organization. My boss is our chief digital officer, and he's responsible for all digital products across Osaic. So the advantage there for us is we're not in any one particular vertical, like finance or IT or operations, but we have visibility and oversight across the entire spectrum of the organization, which enables us to start connecting dots when we think about process and where it's touching one or more functions. And lastly, we wanted a partner to help us with our journey. And any of you who are new to this, maybe you're still considering automation for your firm, I highly recommend engage with a partner that aligns with your values, aligns with your goals, and is going to be there to basically be an enabler to accelerate your program, which I'm happy that we found a really good partner for that. So with that, it became, from there, we said, okay, well, then what are we going to do? And I'm breaking this out in 4 sections, and data-driven insights was the first thing that we were looking at. It's like, well, you know, we have, in our operations area, we have over 200 different cues and how work comes into us. There's a lot there. Well, how do we start to prioritize that work? And so from there, we looked at, well, 2 things. Where's the volume? And where's the pain point from a cycle time perspective? That's that customer metric. So we look at volume because now we could scale, right? Pain point on the cycle times is because they're calling in and saying, where's the status of my request? Second, we said, what's our success criteria? And we wanted to keep it simple. That's definitely a recommendation that I have if you're looking at this early on in your program. We wanted to find some use cases that could prove viability of automation within the firm. And I'll be honest, the very first thing I wanted to do OCR. I wanted to do a document automation because we're so paper intensive, right? It kind of like makes sense. But even, I'll call it the simplest OCR document automation initiative can be medium to higher complexity, right? We've never done automation before, so we said we're gonna dial it back. So with that, we said, okay, let's target development to be no more than 10 weeks, maybe 8 to 10 weeks. Gets our feet wet. Our business is going to learn. We're going to learn. There's going to be IT elements that we don't even know about that we're going to need. And let me tell you something. I've had more meetings and understandings of VDIs now than I care to really acknowledge. But that's where I've been going to school is on the IT side. So we had that involved. From a customer perspective, we said we wanted to see if we can get anywhere from 15 to 25% reductions in cycle time through these use cases. And third, we said cost is not going to be a primary driver here, but ROI is important, and we need to understand FTE equivalent impact. So we call it value-driven. How much value are we driving from an employee headcount perspective? And we're targeting anywhere from 15 to 20. Initially, on the very initial pilot, we were looking at more like 3 to 5, somewhere around there. But we ended up expanding it up to 15 to 20. So third, we said, okay, now we're going to look at the processes. We really want to understand what are the critical processes. And with that, being the process improvement mindset kind of guy and the team that I have, we absolutely looked at end-to-end, and I'll talk about that in an example here in a bit. But we also said, we're not going to try to eat that whole elephant all at once. We're going to just do a sliver of it, right? So we wanted to think end-to-end and think iteratively at the same time. Fourth, we wanted to explore automation usages. So I mentioned OCR. That got quickly thrown out. But we said with unattended automation, are there different ways that we can accomplish it? And so we said we're going to do a use case using a UI. We're going to do a use case using APIs. And then we had another use case where we actually had an automation bot go in and actually perform a task in a third-party system. So different flavors, but we learned something different from each one of those. So with that, we came up with our first set of use cases, and I'm going to highlight what we call status bot. So all of our automation right now is using robotic processing automation. We're exploring other automations here in the future, but automated clearinghouse, or short ACH, you may be familiar with it. Think of it as if you're moving money from your checking account over to your brokerage account, you're likely doing it with an ACH unless you're actually writing a physical check, or you're taking money from your brokerage account, putting it into your checking account. It's a very high volume activity. We do about 100,000 of these a year. And I can tell you with our acquisitions, this is a number based upon our legacy firms. It doesn't include our more recent acquisitions, so the number is going to be even higher. But this, we'll get a form in from the advisor that says, Matt Ham would like to have a recurring $1,000 a month contribution into his IRA, and do it on the 15th of the month. It'll be something like that. So you're going to have bank account information, ABA routing number, you're going to have social security information, all that. That paper comes into the contact center, and we then manually process it, right? We let the advisor know that the request has been submitted to one of our clearing firms, whether it's Pershing, which is owned by BNY Mellon, or NFS, which is owned by Fidelity. And then those clearing firms will go and do their thing behind their curtain, right, and come back to us a day or so later saying, yes, that request has been accepted, we're in good order, you can close out the ticket. So this process end to end, from when the time that the ticket is open to the time that the ticket is closed, is averaging 65 hours. So what's that, about 2.5 days, give or take, right? We also had 2 non-value added touches for every ticket that was coming in, because that's your kid in the back seat on a road trip going, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Right? Up front, it would take on average 14 minutes for a processor to initiate the ACH request, because in addition to just taking that paper or taking the information off the paper and putting it into the system, we have fraud, anti-money laundering checks, we have other validations that we're doing to protect our clients, to protect our advisors, and to protect us as a firm. Last thing we need is for FINRA or the SEC to come knocking on our door and saying we're failing to supervise, right? Or someone's money gets taken by a fraudster. So that's driven into there. But then on the back end, it takes about 3 minutes to close out that ticket, because we got to go into the third-party system. We got to put in an ID, get that information back, come back over into our case management system, close out the ticket, put out an email to the advisor to close it out. It takes about 3 minutes. So with that, we said we are going to focus on the second half of this process. The other reason we said this is because I mentioned we have about 200 different queues out there. Many of those queues act in a very similar fashion. And that becomes an important piece that I'll talk about a little bit later here. So we focused on that. And the other piece that this did is it created an inherent backlog for us for future opportunities. So we're breaking up that elephant multiple times, and it's giving us the ability to create a backlog for future use cases. So when we automated that process, it took us about 8 to 10 weeks to get it done. We saw immediately a 20% reduction in cycle time. So we carved out about 13 hours or so of time. What we also found was 2/3 of the cases were now getting closed a day earlier. And that's important because advisors know that these take about 48 to 72 hours, give or take. And if they got that client out there that's going, okay, the money hasn't moved yet, what's going on? They're calling up right away, right? Now let's talk about the volume impact. So I mentioned FTE value. Given the volume and at 3 minutes a pop, we're saving 3 FTE of value every single week. And that's what we've been saving for the almost now 12 months. 127 hours a week are coming in back to us where we can redeploy 3 people to do other higher touch, higher value activities for our financial advisors. And we're projected in the first year, because we have to think about the financials too, 186% ROI on this use case with an 830% projected 5-year ROI. Makes it really easy to have a conversation and with my executive leadership team when I'm going for more funding, because we're able to deliver such high ROI there. So again, it's not about the ROI from our proof of concept perspective, it was about the customer impact. And a 20% improvement there was right within the target range that we wanted to see. Now, I mentioned that doing this process, just the second half of the process, we have a lot of queues that do very, very similar things. What it did is it started to build momentum. And what we were able to do is, one, get funding as an official program of automation for the firm for this year. But we were able to quickly take what I like to call as an add water to stir approach for status bot and deploy in 1 quarter. We went from 3 status bots to 42 status bots on our highest value queues. We're now at, actually, as of Monday, I now have 59 processes automated, and I'll talk a little bit about that here with the next one. Tapping into Automation Copilot and document automation. Just this past Monday, we launched the front end of that process. So we're now seeing what that's going to do. So we're touching that 14 minutes now. We think it's going to get down to about somewhere in the 2 to 3 minute range. So you start to look at that and go, now we're touching about 75% of that process. But through these other automation status bots, we went from a value driven of 5 FTE during our proof of concept to 11 in Q1, about 17 in Q2, which was our first full quarter running all the status bots. Quarter to date, we're closer to 18 now. That number's jumped up a bit. And we're excited to see what Q4 is going to be, because Q4 is one of our highest volume quarters. If you think about end of year activities, you got to get your retirement money contributions submitted. If you are of at least 73 years old, I believe it is, and have an IRA, you have mandatory required distributions you have to make on your accounts. All that generates a lot of volume at the end of the year. But when we look at that and say, what is the total value that we've driven? Since inception a year ago, we've driven over 22,000 hours of value. Actually, since it's been a few weeks since we updated the slide, Linda, we're actually exceeded this week, we exceeded 25,000, and we've now exceeded over 200,000 cases closed. And similar to what we saw in the proof of concept, we have about 2/3 of our cases getting closed a day earlier. So the impact here from a customer perspective is we're getting it done faster. Bots are able, with much greater efficiency and accuracy, be able to bring back status and communicate the right status back to our customer. We are seeing reductions in our contact center for what's the status of my ticket. We're not seeing as many of those. They still happen. I mean, we got 150 other cases or queues out there, right? But we're making an impact there. And it's allowing us to normalize our business. So as we have spikes, in April, we saw this with the tax season. We get a lot of volume coming in from tax season. We had our most successful tax season this year because the bots, the automation that we were doing was focused on work that touched tax season, touched end of year. So we're able to start to normalize that. This clicker's not liking me. So some lessons learned. People, process, technology. Number 1, engaging everyone in the organization throughout the process. And I say everyone because I would say one of the most impactful conversations I had was on January 10th of this year, and that was with our CEO and his C-suite. And it was an opportunity to, 1, share the results of the POC, 2, ask for funding to make this a permanent program, and 3, align on what automation is and what it is not. There's a lot of research out there. People have different opinions of it and everything like that. And so it allowed us to start to get everyone on the same page of what we're using it for currently, the art of possible for the future, So that way, the communication can start from the top down while I'm working more from a bottoms up, if you will, with our subject matter experts, our line leaders, and others in the organization. Secondly, transparency on program goals and objectives. And this is an important one because the number one question that I get from subject matter experts, supervisors, managers is automation is going to, automate my job away. And I bring it back to why did we do this from the beginning? It was about our customer. Our customers were telling us we needed to do better, that they expected more from us. And to do that, we want to leverage automation to make that happen. We want our employees having high-touch relationship engagements that are value-added every single time with our financial advisors and working on the things that are having the most impact. From a process perspective, it's important to be thinking end-to-end. You're going to learn something through that process. Every one of our use cases, even the add water and stir on the quick status spots, there's always something new that we learn from it, some little nuance. And understanding and thinking about end, but then applying an iterative process to your automation, I believe gives you a 1 + 1 = 3 kind of a result versus 1 + 1 = 2. With that in mind, your business partners may say, well, we just need to do the entire end-to-end process. And when you start to look at it that way, one, you can get into analysis paralysis, and you end up not touching it all, or you start to lose interest in it because, hey, 3 or 4 months later, or whatever it might be, you're still trying to get through a flow of what it looks like today. So being able to carve out very specific pieces and quantify those pieces so you know what the impact is really, really important. I mentioned keep the customer first and foremost, and I can't say that enough. And as I travel and talk with our financial professionals across the country at our conferences and other engagements that I have with them, when I tell them what we're doing with automation, they get very excited. It becomes like a kid in a candy store in a way. One of the best benefits that I love about automation is the ease of being able to quantify what the work is. One of the challenges, and you may have experienced this in your organization in more traditional type IT-driven initiatives, you might have an initial CBA that's worked on with finance and everything. You go and deploy, everyone gives high fives. How many go back and say, did we achieve what we wanted from a cost benefit? Most don't. That's been my experience, I'll say it that way. With automation, you're getting immediate feedback. You know how many bots are running, you know how many times they're doing the process that you've automated, and it's very easy to quantify. And therefore, I'm able to advocate to say, hey, we have 186% ROI in just under 12 months. That's important when you look at talking with finance, talking with others who are holding the purse strings, if you will, and be able to say, you build credibility like that, we're going to give you more so we can automate more and turn that into higher value activities. I like this one. Don't sign up for driving and taking the cost saves away. Let the business owners be responsible for that. So I haven't shared the numbers, right? And I won't be sharing the numbers. Those are confidential. But I'm not here to say, like, if I have $1 million goal, that I'm taking $1 million out of our operating budget. My goal is driving $1 million of value, let's say, right? And how the business decides to either reinvest the money, ensure that we're staying self-funded, I'll say it that way, from an automation program perspective, or actually taking money back down to the bottom line. Let finance and the business leaders do that. Let the value of the automation do the speaking, and let the leaders then decide how best to divvy out the money. From a technology perspective, early engagement, I can't emphasize this enough. Being on the business side, I go to school every day on the technology side. That's where I spend my time, and I've intentionally spent time with our infrastructure team, with our info security team and development teams to understand a little bit more of their process each and every day, because I can't tell you how many times, oh, I need this entitlement for this system, or I need to submit what for Active Directory, or I need a new VDI session. Those sort of things we've created runbooks for now, but I had to learn all that. Whereas if we were on the tech side, that would have come natural to them, right? But having those partners there from the beginning really helped to make it a little bit easier. Not saying that we didn't have some bumps along the way, but That was, I'll call it learning opportunities from that perspective. We have a lot of outside vendors that we work with, and so part of it also was not just internal conversations, but with our outside vendors saying, we're going to be deploying automation, and we're going to be engaging in automation with your tools. Do you have APIs? Do we have to go through the UI route? Those sort of things. If you don't have APIs, let's talk about what that looks like in the future, because here's where we're going, and we can start planning for that. Lastly, I'll say is frequent conversations on what the program is doing, its outcomes, its learnings, its findings, and also understand from your technology partners, what is their roadmap? One current constraint I have, and it's a good problem to have, is we're growing faster in our automation program than our infrastructure team had planned, and we are running a risk of being out of VDIs and virtual machines, right? Good problem to have, but we all know that you can't just put in a ticket to the help desk and have a brand new infrastructure stack in 3 to 5 business days, right? It doesn't happen that way. So there's a lot of planning that has to go into play there, and that's why it's important that we have that regular conversation. And the clicker, there we go. Okay. So looking ahead, what are we doing today? Well, we initially built with our proof of concept, mostly using UIs. It allowed us to do quick iterative development, and we only did one API as a test, I'll say. We have switched now to say any build that we do requires APIs, and essentially from a COE standard perspective, the UI is the exception. And we know that there's going to be times where there's a partial UI, and we're going to have to do both, and we're okay with that. But as a core principle, we want to build with APIs. It's more stable, less support and maintenance requirements, those sort of things. We're now doing front-end intake automation. I mentioned, this past Monday, we automated the front end of that ACH process using document automation and automation copilot. So those two combined is enabling us to have our processors interact with our automation directly to provide the right information to get to our clearing firm to get those ACHs set up very timely. And lastly, we want to have parity between our third-party partners. So we have clearing services with Pershing, BNY Mellon, as well as with NFS Fidelity. And so we want to have for a parity of experience for our financial advisors, irrespective of which firm they're custodying the assets that they manage under. So that way, we're not treating one more than the other, if you will. It's really from the right thing to do. And then when I think about generative AI, there's so many opportunities in this space. And one of the things that actually really excites me and what we heard about yesterday is around document automation with unstructured data. There's so much unstructured data in our industry that leveraging AI tools, automation tools to help us start to parse through that is going to be incredibly valuable. I'm excited to see where that goes, especially as I think about contact centers and knowledge management tools, those sort of things. When I think about, from a risk perspective, AML and having early detections with unstructured data that might give us advanced insights to where we might have a fraudster. One of my colleagues that you may have heard of from yesterday from Key Bank, mentioned how they have such a relationship with their fraud team that they're able to essentially spin up documentation when a new fraud type is detected within 24 hours. So they put that kind of focus on it because it's a real threat for all of us, and we want to mitigate that as much as possible because we know we'll never be ahead of the fraudsters. So that's a little look into what we're doing here at Osaic. I really appreciate your time. We're going to open it up for some Q&A. We got, I think, a few minutes left here.
Got 5 minutes. Well, before doing that, what a wonderful, wonderful job. Well done.
Thank you.
Good job. All right, ask Matt anything. Yes.
Well, first, congratulations on your journey. Obviously, success breeds interest and ideas. Mm-hmm. For yourself and for the rest of the organization. What procedures do you use, what process, what technology do you use to manage now this future-looking workload of ideas for automation? How are you tracking the COE part of the future
Great
of your organization?
question, and thank you very much. We're doing it on spreadsheets right now. I'm just being totally candid. We started to use COE Manager earlier this year, we identified a bug actually that we brought back to the Automation Anywhere team that Shibumi has now fixed. So it actually created a security vulnerability for us based on our security policies. So we had to put that on hold. So we're going to be configuring that here for. I really like COE Manager and what it can do. I like how it provides an automated way or a single link for my business partners to go in, enter ideas, and we have an initial high-level, opportunity, ROI, that kind of a thing. We've been managing it on spreadsheets, and because we couldn't use COE Manager because of the security vulnerability, I actually did my own little reverse engineering hack on that piece of it, so I could get some of that benefit via like a SharePoint kind of forms, if you will.
That's why COE was invented, was
Yeah.
created for that
I'm looking
reason.
forward to getting it. I know Evan's waiting for me to do it too.
So I'm curious from the business side if there's ever discussion. So when we talk about FTE hours saved, that's really an unrealized gain until there's some quantification on where
Yep.
that went.
That's right.
So from a business perspective, it's a sunk cost. That FTE still is there.
Mm-hmm.
So is there ever a discussion on the business side about where that goes?
We do have discussions about that. We refer to it as harvesting of benefits. And the business is evaluating what that looks like for them in combination with our finance team. From an automation perspective, though, I wanted to make sure that it's clear that people understand the value that's being driven, right? How we decide to either reinvest the money, take no action, or bring it all down to the bottom line is really, I would say, a business and a financial decision that they need to make. I mean, at some point, if we're driving, let's say, hundreds of FTE value and no action is being taken, someone's going to say something. It's probably a lot sooner than hundreds, right? But we're enabling that and bringing awareness to it. The other thing is that doing end-to-end automation and end-to-end evaluation of the process, we have found that what we find is the true number of how much time is being taken on that process varies from what is in the workforce management planning. So we have disparity there. But again, we're bringing and highlighting the total impact that's happening, and then the business can reconcile that against what they have from a workforce planning perspective, because that's what's driving the budget, right? So we're highlighting value, and that's why I intentionally say value. Oh, oh.
Actually, my question is very connected to the previous one, but I'm not still clear in your experience how you justify the fact that you are providing or driving that value of what you are automating, even though the decision is in the business and the financial area, you must to quantify, I mean, in a way, I mean, that effort that was previously being handled manually, activities and so on, how you then quantify that you are sustainable throughout the time, or you are getting more and more support in order to continue your automation program.
Yeah, that will probably be a conversation for 2024, I honestly believe. We're getting ready to start our 2024 planning. But keep in mind, we're just completing our first full year here, right? And the core reason we did this is because we have to elevate that experience for our financial advisors. So we're looking at this as a learning and investment into what are we getting from the automation? How does it translate by being able to shift operational resources into other activities to help continue that service level that we're trying to go for with our financial advisors? So it's definitely an investment. I'll say it that way. But I'm sure that come this next budget season, we'll be having those sort of conversations.
Well, as an investor, my perspective is that any time that you move my money 20% faster, that is a gain for me. And that's a gain for Osaic
Yeah.
as well. So thank you for the good work.
Thank you.
And let's congratulate Matt again and wish him future success. All right. Well, thank you very much. And don't forget, we have 2 other sessions coming up, and making sure that you check them out before wrapping up for Imagine 2020.